Right, here we Fabulous. Well, thank you both for being here today. We are celebrating women in art and music. We have wonderful Denver-based artists, authors, all of the above. So you guys are two women of extreme passions. And I'm so excited to speak with both of you. So thank you for being here. My name is Eliane. I am the program coordinator for Reach. I'm here with Chelsea and Nyasha to discuss women in art and music. So Nyasha, I will start with you. Give us an introduction of you, how you relate to this topic, what art means to you, all that good stuff, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I'm Nyasha Williams. I identify as an author, creator, and activist. I have quite a few businesses. One is Writing to Change the Narrative, which is centered around my authoring. So my work, I don't want to be pigeonholed ever. And so I currently I have published books that are um, children's books, and then I also have a tarot deck and an oracle deck, but I'm working on so many other things beyond that. I have graphic novels in the works, plays in the works, so I'm like lots of different writing pieces that are happening. I also have a business with my mother-in-law, and we sell different spiritual products and different supports for people on their spiritual journey. And so that is another thing we do, and that has ancestral money. We have incense. And then a new endeavor I'm stepping into is I'm also the founder of Fire and Honey Press. So that is my publishing company that I am putting out into the world because I want something different. It's going to be a digital publishing company, but it is something that to me matters because I feel like the publishing company can pigeonhole so much, and they are only willing to take chances on work that they feel like is going to be financially viable. It's all about profit. And so for me, I really want my decisions to be made beyond profit and really what needs to be out in the world to transform our world. So that is kind of the work that I do. Um, I don't know if you want to go into more to myself or if you want to go to Chelsea first before I dig in a little more.
Yeah, let's go to Chelsea. And I'm sure, I'm sure the other questions will dive super deep
Mhm.
into you. So
Yes.
thank you for that. Oh, congratulations on that publishing, your own publishing there. I think that's super exciting. So congratulations. Chelsea, over to you.
Oh, so I am Chelsea Ray. I started making jewelry a few years ago in my hometown in when COVID hit because I was a photographer and I still am, but that was like my main form of business in my hometown. And I pretty much just designed jewelry to kind of help female energy power emerge, give confidence, help women feel, loved, giving that self-love. And then I also do photography for brands now too. So I'm kind of like when I first moved here, it was mainly just jewelry, but now I'm focusing on helping other small businesses with photography and then women with jewelry. So yeah, that's what I do.
Great. I do want to shout out Chelsea and Nyasha both have on Chelsea's earrings today. So as you see those beautiful pieces rolling around, check them out. They're so stunning. So yay.
All
All
my
right.
jewelry is intentional, by the way. So
Love it.
yes.
Fabulous. And then resources for their websites, Instagrams, anything that has to do with them will be posted on Reach's LinkedIn and Facebook pages. And it will be on our website as well. So just stay tuned for that. All right, you guys. So diving in, first question we have is how do race, ethnicity, sexuality, and other identities intersect with gender in the art world? And how have you personally seen these intersections influence artist perspectives, themes, and avenues? Nyasha, I'll start with you.
So I'll say that when we look at any kind of identities, you have your visible identities and your invisible, correct?
Mhm.
So, my visible identities are I'm black and I am a woman, right? Those are like very clear. Um, in terms of invisible, I'm bisexual, but I'm also married to a man. So sometimes people will even take that identity from me with
Mhm.
like even though it is invisible. Um, I consider my husband and I working middle class. Um, my education is not visible. I am able-bodied passing. I have been in accidents, so I do have children notice it, adults don't, but I do have some physical differences than a fully able-bodied person.
Mm.
You know, I'm adopted. That's not something that, unless you are see me with my parents or know that, or have a visible sighting in that way, or maybe see pictures of me growing up, would know that about me.
Mm.
Um, you know, I grew up in a two-parent household, and you know, I was raised in upper middle class household. And so I think when you look at those different intersectionalities in terms of like me moving as an artist, in terms of what avenues open for me, I was like, you know, having parents who were able to support me was a big deal. You know, my parents were able to buy my camera when I had the whims of, you know, working in photography. My parents were able to, um, you know, and family members supported me in having funds to go to school and all those different things. So there were things when I had different callings. Like I went to culinary school in South Africa. I don't know if anyone watches the Great British Bake Off. Prue Leith, that I went to her culinary school in South Africa, and
Wow.
so you know I've gotten these opportunities, which again I have privilege in being able to move certain ways because of my identities and like my family situation, etc.
Mm.
Um, I personally say like something I believe in terms of getting anywhere, and especially as a creative, I do not believe in someone being self-made. I believe that it takes community. I think everyone gets support in some way, whether that's financial support, whether that's like just encouragement and someone being your cheerleader. Maybe it's someone who stayed around while you were working and just like gave you that physical closeness while you're working on something at late nights, whatever that looked like. I feel like there's always support in how we build and us building what we're trying to do in the world. And so that I think layers into everything and is definitely a part of um, just having the ability to move as you want to be able to move as an artist. And I feel like that's a part of my role now is trying to support other artists so they can move as they need to move because it takes a village, it takes community, it takes support. So yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I love what you said about support too. I think that we can get funneled and like there's only certain ways to support. There's so many ways to support no matter what it is. And so I think that's super important, whether it's just like proximity or you're actually deep
Mhm.
diving, like financially supporting someone physically by their side all the time. There's so many different ways, words of encouragement. I love that you pointed that out. And yeah, I'm big on community support as well. So that's a big part of my journey. So I completely relate to that. Chelsea, I'll pass it to you.
So to segue off of what she said, I kind of grew up with the self-made mindset because I was more, I had to I mean, I guess it was more of like middle class, but my family did struggle with money. So I didn't have quite the same like opportunities. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it all myself and I'm gonna like get this. And so it helped me when I was in my hometown. And then moving here, I really did realize how important it is to be in community with other people and how important it is to really like it really helped me find um, you know, other people of color because when I was in Huntsville, I did have, friends of all races and things like that. But moving here, where I feel like because it's not quite um, the norm, I feel like when you do find people who are so, um, I don't know, drawn and wanting to like give people of color like a voice and a space, it means so much more. And I really feel like that's what I found when I had community with Nyasha because I don't know, I love being able to be around people who also have the same views, wanting to put, BIPOC and POC first because it's hard to do where I was before. So being able to do that here and being like, hey, it's okay you can be boho and be black girl. You can be country and be black girl. You can be whatever you want. Because I feel like a lot of times, especially with POC, we're put in these boxes, these like stereotypical boxes. And I want to be able to have everyone just be whoever they want to be, like make whatever you want to make. It's okay to be who you want to be. So yeah, I'm really happy to find that here.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, having those natural avenues that we feel
Hmm.
we have to follow, I think
Yeah.
that's so relatable. How did you two meet again? I want to know that story.
So we actually met at it was almost like a party for your business kind of event
That's
that we
fun.
went to. And we were like, she was like, I'm an Aquarius. Like, I'm an Aquarius too. What? Cool. And we just both had so many, I don't know, like views and things in common. And like, she does a lot of work with kids teaching, and my whole family has been teachers. I was also a teacher, so we connected on that as well. So I just feel like, yeah, that's the first spot that we met, and then we just kept kind of like staying, seeing each
Yeah,
other at markets, and growing together, and it's just been great. Yeah. What
that's super fun. I love
Also,
that, and always nice to
are you gonna
find
say?
partners.
I, I was just gonna say it was a really cool event because it was centered on
Mhm.
women,
Mhm.
and the event was centered on us celebrating things outside of what is stereotypically celebrated for women. So
Mm.
like the goal was like a lot of times like I think we as women we get celebrated in our gender identity. So it's like they celebrate us for marriage, we're celebrated for like these very children, very stereotypical things, whereas
Yeah.
like this whole event was like come forth and receive your flowers and like get your platform to share what you're excited about, and maybe
Mhm.
you're like people around you are not cheering you on or
Mhm.
not celebrating you in this way, but we want to give you this space to celebrate you in what you feel proud of in this moment that's outside of these stereotypical ways to celebrate women.
Yes.
That's super beautiful. Is that a recurring event? Was that a one-time thing?
I don't think it's
Um,
recurred,
I
but
don't think it
I was
occurred.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, we
Man, it
definitely.
should. That's amazing. Okay, well, let me know if it's ever back because
Yeah.
I definitely want to promote that on our end for sure. Fabulous.
Absolutely.
Thank you both for that. All right, moving on. Next question I have is, can you identify any notable trends or shifts in how women are represented and recognized in the art industry today? And in what ways does gender influence artistic expression and interpretation, in your opinion? Nyasha, let's start with you again.
So I obviously like speak for literature and media because that's my realm. That's where I really live. Um, but I think literature and media, the landscape's changing a lot. It's evolving. I think women have really taken over publishing. Like we are definitely dominating. There's definitely way more women in the publishing industry. That being said, in terms of diversity, still lacking, right? So like if we're looking at that intersectionality aspect of it, it's very white women. And so that needs to evolve still. And again, when you think about the aspect of if publishing is controlled by white people, that's enhancing the white systems, the systems that currently exist. It's hard for new stories to be told. It's hard for us to transform. It's hard for us to give chance to new things. I know that I've recently been talking to people about some of the people feel like films and movies, and especially music, particularly it's like people are not seeing things that are making sense. Like it's like Hollywood's not meeting the mark. Like we're all like, what?
Yeah.
Why did you put this out? This is so confusing. Like there's a Sasquatch movie coming out. I'm like, who
Yeah.
asked for this? Like what? Like the Civil War movie. I'm like, that's a little too on the nose for me. Don't love that.
Mhm.
Like let's actually make some changes so that we don't head that way. Like
Mhm.
please, can we make some different moves? And so I think what's cool though is women are definitely walking more in their power now. Like I feel like we've just I think like intersectionally lots of different intersects have been able to break through glass ceilings and been able to move differently now. And I think people have more power in terms of speaking up if something they're not being treated well, not being treated correctly, which has been historically a huge issue for women, right? And so I think that we look at like even what's going on with Nickelodeon. I was like, when you listen
Yeah.
to those women and the women who were working for him and what their experience was like, I was like, oh goodness, like how did this happen? How did we allow this? And then it's like, thankfully, we're in a world where people feel like they can speak out and speak up. And so that makes the workplace safer for women. That allows women to have a voice. That allows women, first of all, to start moving towards better pay, like in terms of speaking out about the pay um, gap that is super problematic. And so all these kinds of things are evolving. They're not where they need to be, but they're come a long way from where we began. Um, and I think I'm seeing so many more BIPOC women come as authors because they're writing for their inner child, they're writing for themselves. So you see so many more female authors that are BIPOC who are putting words out there that they needed as a kid, but are inspiring the next generation. Um, and I do think that because of that, it's because it's more female thing. I always say that like we need more male authors and people to write for Black males as well, because that is a gap that is happening. Is there's so many, I think, Black women and like BIPOC women who are writing for their inner child, because you generally write for yourself, really. And we are missing that. They're like Black males don't, like there's going to be a gap soon enough. So I do voice that, you know, looking and trying to make sure that like BIPOC boys are also seeing themselves in books because it's so important.
Beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's refreshing. It's always nice to be making the strides, but there's always more work to do. And I think your point really spoke to that. So beautiful way of wording it, though. Chelsea, what about you?
So since my business is really social media focused, I really love seeing the amount of women who are participating in their own businesses through social media and seeing that grow. Because although I'm not a huge fan of algorithms, I love that when I find an amazing POC creator and I keep following more, the algorithm shows me more. So I'm able to be connected with more people who, have the same or similar views that I have, similar things that I do. That's been a really big thing. And I also like too, like with what Nyasha said before with Nickelodeon, I really feel like being able to be real on social media, like how many things have changed because someone posted about something on social media, you know what I mean? Before even the news did. So I really think that it's a good way to spread your voice. And it's also a good way to help, women, other women find each other without having it be, so hard. Because normally you have to have this like box that you have to put yourself in and not really be able to, form the business in a real way. And I've loved seeing how many like just like, real women have been out here doing this, doing similar things, finding each other, finding community. So I think social media is really changing in that way as far as, women being able to be represented more.
Absolutely. And just the accessibility of, again,
Mhm.
kind of going into that avenue of like, oh, can I be an artist?
Yeah.
Like, everybody has, I think, levels of creativity that they can all explore. And I mean, my mom, for instance, my mom's really into sewing and doing all these kind of crafts, and she is so creative, but her whole life, I think my dad, he grew up with artists' parents, and my dad was always the artist. So in my mom's brain, it was like, oh, I'm not really the artist, but she's so creative. So it's so cool watching her find other, artists, especially,
Yeah.
middle-aged women. You can pick up stuff like this at any time. There's not a date of when, oh, I missed my point. Like the landscape of creativity is so vast. So
And that reminds me too, because when I was, people talk about the Saturn return, I really feel like I didn't find myself until I was like 27, 28, and I thought like, oh yeah, by 25, I'll just be married with a house. Like, it was like, no, life doesn't always work that way. So it's a good way for me to feel like I could start over and it not be like terrifying or scary. So yeah.
absolutely, just a refreshing community to be a part of.
Mhm.
My next question, I kind of want to go off of, because I know both of you are involved in the digital space, especially Nyasha with your publishing as well. So, let's see here. In what ways has the digital landscape transformed the art world for you, and what opportunities and challenges does this digital shift present, or do you anticipate it presenting? Chelsea, I'll actually start with you on this since you
Okay.
were on social media.
Yes. So I really think digitally, like we said before, I think it's a good way to work ideas off of each other and be able to yes, there are ways, like, people get scared of like people's ideas getting stolen, but I think it's also a good way to help seeds grow and help plant seeds in others. Because if I didn't have like digital media, I have no idea where my business would be right now, because that is really what like kickstarted me into who I am today. Because my main focus, like I thought like, I'll just make a video on TikTok and see what happens. And then that just being able to put stuff out digitally as far and photography as well. Most of my work is digital photography. So really, I don't know, without digital media, I'm not really sure where I would be right now. So I'm just grateful and the accessibility and how, I don't know, it brings people together and it creates that importance. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nyasha, what about for you?
Um, so I think that the digital world is been transformative in terms of giving small businesses opportunities that wouldn't have existed, right? Um, I do not like Amazon, but
Yeah.
I will say that, it's given authors who didn't have a chance, or like publishing that wouldn't have taken a chance on their book, a chance to, and a platform to put their book out there. So there's always these,
Pros and cons.
layers.
Yeah.
There's layers and everything,
Hmm.
right? And then TikTok, I mean, TikTok is, it's out of all the platforms, it's the platform of action where people are ready to do something, whether it's buy, whether it's like, you know, step up and be on the streets and protest or whatever it is, people are ready to move and with TikTok. And so I have a lot of people who have self-published who are on TikTok. Like TikTok has been transformative for Book Talk in terms of like the book industry has like, and it's funny because these big publishing companies, they don't know how to work these things. They don't understand it. It's literally a lot of times people who have indie published or self-published who are figuring it out on their own, who are having
Yeah.
immense success on these platforms. And if they can, I feel like publishing industries have huge budgets. They just don't get it and understand it. And so, it's giving people a chance who wouldn't have had that. Um, and so that's, I think, been really powerful. And I think, like Chelsea said, it's community. It's
Hmm.
being able to find people who are in rhythm with you, in alignment with you. Like I have so many people I'm writing books with, or we're done projects with, who I met online. We just met online. People who support my publishing company, I've never met them in person, but they're out here like helping fund my publishing company because they saw what I'm doing and are here for it and want to help support the vision. And it takes that village, like I said. So I feel like community, the digital world allows us to connect, and then also resources. I feel like I don't always know how to do things or like need support in things, and being online allows that flexibility of being able to learn through others and being able to find support in some way or another.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that that's actually a perfect segue into my next question. I'm sure community will factor into this, but do either of you believe that there are unique challenges faced by women artists today? And if so, how have you seen women artists, whether it was you or others,
Hmm.
overcome these challenges to achieve recognition and success? Niash, I'll start with you on that one since community I know will definitely factor into that.
So, in terms of unique challenges, I think that let me start with the second part of the question. So, in terms of overcoming any challenges or overcoming things, I think that we're in a day and an age where authenticity and like being truthful and being real is what sells and is
Hmm.
what is going to really make your brand stand out more than anything. So, in my opinion, I was like, the more you can be yourself, be authentic in your voice, be truthful, and just like really hone in on, I call it your anchor. It's like when you make decisions, like what is anchoring you so that you know that you're making decisions in alignment with you and what you're about. Does that make sense? And so for me, I feel like if the more people get in tune with that, that's when you have the most flow in your life. In terms of unique challenges, I think that to me, the challenges are more intersectional than just women. And I say that because I think that um, as women, I think that, you know, we are at a point where I think our voices are being heard more than ever. In the same breath, I think that that can be differ depending on like the intersectionalities of you, within you. So it's like if you are disabled, that is going to affect how visible you are or how, your work is perceived. I know Chelsea and I have discussed on social media how like certain things are pushed, certain things are not. And your identity and how you're presenting is going to play and what you're talking about. I talk a lot about decolonization, indigenization, talking indigenizing. I talk about liberation. I talk about like a lot of things that I think there are systems that don't want that to be successful. And we
Mhm.
see this in the example of book banning, right? We see this in the example of, the correct, like, we're not talking about what truly happened historically. We're only hearing the history from one angle, from one narrative. And
Mhm.
so when, you're talking about things that are challenging that, um, it's very easy for you to get lost in the algorithms and not being able to have your voice heard. And the more intersectional you are, like the more your identity is not this stereotypical, if you're not cisgendered, if you're not heterosexual, if you're not, um, you know, hitting these certain marks, if the more marginalized you are, I don't like saying marginalized, but the more like on the outskirts you are, like the more unique your identity is, the more challenging it can be for your voice to be heard.
Yes.
But what I think is cool about the digital space is that you can still find your community. There are ways. If you hit it right, you can find people who want to listen, who want
Mhm.
this, who are ready to uplift your voice. So all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important. It's great that the digital landscapes give us that ability to connect, maybe in ways that we weren't before, but it's also important to recognize algorithms
Yeah.
and what you are funneled to kind of have access to. And a great point to make for, viewers as well, if you're exploring and wanting to support artists that maybe, just more distanced than what you have direct access to, whether it's in person or virtually. It can be explored digitally for sure, and just having to do the work to find those people for sure. That's a great point, Nyasha. Thank you. Chelsea, I'll pass that same question over to you.
So for me, I realized a big challenge for me was feeling safe in certain market settings. Like for instance, Nyasha and I, we come to a market and we would realize like we would be the only women of color there with a market of like 50 vendors. So I feel like for me, that's been a challenge finding um, markets and places that will give us, you know, the I don't know, the equal space that I feel like is going to get us to the point that we need to be, because I have really felt I've found some amazing, beautiful people who put POC first, who put women first, but it's been a long road because of, you know, just kind of that intersectionality that Nyasha was talking about. I feel like it's hard when you walk into a place and you don't really feel represented, you know what I mean? And so that's been a big challenge for me, is not really feeling as represented as I feel like should be, since there's so many different types of people in Denver. So you'd think like going to an event, you'd have, every type of person represented, and that's just not the case. It's like, if you're, you know, like if you don't fit those boxes that she was talking about, if you're not, cisgender, if you're not whatever, that's been a big thing, feeling safe. So I have, after some work and some time, I have found that. But yeah, that's one of the challenges that I've definitely faced. So I try to create, like, I don't know, just warm, loving spaces for everybody. And I'm hoping that, we can grow that to something else, to something bigger and more,
And I think this is where we can plug in that
Yes.
Chelsea and I have been feeling this gap. Like we worked
Mhm.
multiple markets last year together, and it was really cool. But again, we kept seeing this gap of like
Mhm.
the community members that we would like to be in the space weren't there. They were feeling very white, and
Mhm.
we wanted more diverse markets, and we were looking for something a little different. And so Chelsea and I are working with another lovely woman to build a event company that is centered on like just having these really diverse curated events, and just making people feel really welcomed in the space.
That's amazing. That is super cool. That you guys are spearheading that. That's a big challenge too. That's a heavy lift. So to take the leadership on that is super admirable. Keep us posted. Seriously, that is super,
You
super cool.
will.
Amazing. All right. Next question I have for you guys is why do you think it's crucial to foster creativity and artistic expression in young people? And what strategies would you give to educators or parents or kind of guardians to employ or encourage creativity and artistic exploration in youth? Chelsea, I'll start with
Yeah.
you.
So for me, I really feel like young people are the seeds of the world and the seeds of, how our future is going to be shaped and who is going to have opportunities and who's not, like what Asha was saying about the publishing companies, how it's all older white women. Like, yes, it's more women, but it's important to really, I don't know, foster those seeds because if you want good things to grow, you have to plant good seeds. So I really feel like it's so important to give that creativity to young people. So I feel like as far as what parents should do, maybe making space for more creative things in their children's schools, things like that, create space for more art, more music. I'm a big time music lover. I really feel like some of the best times that I had in school were the creative aspects of that. That's how I figured out I wanted to be a photographer. I was in photography classes in school. So really continuing to make those creative spaces in schools, clubs, events, cities, wherever, even if there's kids who don't have those, those things possible to them, being able to create, communities and environments that do that for every child, every type of person is really important to me. So
Absolutely. And the levels of what that looks like,
mm,
creativity, it can be super simple, it can be something like a huge event, but
mhm,
anything that it is, there are definitely avenues to have that be
mhm,
more promoted. So, Niyasha, I'll pass the same question to you.
So, a quote that like always sits on my heart, which is like how I have a tree on my wrist, my first tattoo, is the true meaning of life is planting trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. So I'm deeply for kids. I'm all about the future generation. I think that if you want to measure the health of the health of a society, like look at what's going on with the kids. That's going
no,
to tell you everything.
exactly.
So in terms of creativity is like super, super important for dreaming and
Mhm,
imagining. And
mhm,
so um, I feel like that's something that we all need to maintain, kids, but like adults as well. And art plays this huge transformative world in shaping our world. Like it's really hard for things to exist or be that we can't see. Like mainstream media is generally how people are viewing and moving and creating and building in the world. And
mhm,
so that's why like the visuals we see are so important and why it's been so important for this to transform. Um, and the other aspect about art that's super, super important is creative resistance. It's
mhm,
like art has always played a role in transforming our world, in fighting back
yeah.
against oppressors, and um, in inspiring and giving hope because hope is necessary towards believing in something new. And I say yes, kids. I'm like, we always need play. I was like, I feel like this is something that even in our classrooms, like for so long, I taught kindergarten and it's like
Mm,
when I told people what I did in my kindergarten classroom, they couldn't believe what was expected from kindergartners at this age because they were like, I was just playing with toys. And I'm like, that's not at all what it is now. Like, it's another level.
yeah.
So it's like, you know, I think we're losing learning through play. And that is a huge way that a lot of us should be starting our
Mm,
educational journey. Um, and play should just be something that's a part of every day. Like, I have friends who are literally in older grades that try and make space for not only social emotional learning, but also play, like having the kids have fun outside of just going to recess. And so that is something necessary, is something important. I think also like creativity helps us learn so much about ourselves. And so that's another aspect of why it's so important to be able to foster creativity in people. I really um, highlight it for adults too, because I think there's adults who have forgotten play and forgotten creativity, and I feel like it needs to be rekindled because, like I said, it's that imagining and dreaming. And if we're going to be dream beyond our current systems, dream beyond what currently exists, we need that inspiration and that imagination to come forth. I think of The Little Prince, the story. If you haven't read it, it's like little boys, a lot of the adults just don't understand him, and it's because his brain is on a different like level, and it's like a different vibration, and and it's like I try and remind people to come back to that creativity. And then there's also adults and children who had to grow up too fast, who didn't get a chance to play or create, and I think that that is important for them to come back to too. So I try and do that all the time. I feel like I live in that world as a creative for kids. I'm like, I watch children's shows all the time. I'm reading children's books all the time. I probably have more picture books than I have any other kind of book in my house. But I am right now about to start next month. Once a month, there will be a picture book club for adults. So just bringing that joy back for adults, because we need adults to have fun too. So adults and kids, we just need that play back in our lives.
That is super cool. I love that. Oh my gosh, I want to join. So let me know. That
Thank
sounds amazing. I think it's also a really great point of how children can learn from adults, but adults can learn from children. Like it is so
Yes.
equal in that way. And the whole creative aspect of we do tend to lose those creative avenues and that play when you grow. And I think I loved what you said, Nyasha. I think it was so beautiful what you said and how to resonate with those roots. It relates everybody on a human level, regardless of age, race, any sort of intersection that you have, anything. It just, we're all human at the end of the day. And I think that's a super beautiful way to find that connection is through play and creativity. So I really loved what you said there. Thank you for sharing that. All right, next question. It's kind of a threefold question, so let me know if you need me to repeat anything. So how do cultural differences and regional contexts shape the experiences and opportunities of artists around the world? And what have you learned from diverse global perspectives? And then on top of that, how have you used, how have you seen art used as an important vessel to kind of fuse cultural bridges together? Whoever wants to take this one first, it's a heavy lift, so go for it.
I'll take it first because I feel like Nyasha is gonna just say this like beautifully, and like so so I'll just go first. And I really feel like um I know there can be pros and cons with it, but I do think that spirituality in many cultures has helped bring people together. Like, yes, they are very different, but the one constant in that is kind of tapping into spirit and, seeing the world more than just like a on flat view of your life, seeing it from a deeper perspective, which I think is so important because that was a big reason why I moved out here. I didn't know anybody when I moved out here. I didn't, know what was going to happen, but I just kind of focused on um, spirit, and it really helped me. And then as far as how has that bridged art, for instance, like there's like what Nasha said before about how art is used in, with diversity and, in cultures, creating the truth, creating, I don't know, really real. I feel like without art, we wouldn't have the truth because most, to create a back push, we use art to do that. We share a beautiful, sign that someone posted, or we share a beautiful, something that someone created to get that out. Like for instance, the when the first what do you call it? The first Palestine, all that stuff was happening, there were so many beautiful, like I feel like it brought some people together and learning about what was really going on in Palestine and learning about like, oh hey, this is important. And that art kind of brought people together and made them, I don't know, it just helped connect people in a way that also helped people who normally wouldn't have been on the news, wouldn't have been seen. You know what I mean? So it really helps people who aren't seen become more seen. And then what was the last part of the question? I think I skipped the end.
No, you're good. You're good. The last part of the question was, let's see here. Sorry, I lost it. What have you learned from diverse global perspectives.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I've just really learned um, how to make space for more than just myself and noting, like, okay, let's make space for these people, let's make space for everybody else, because it's very easy to only focus on one thing. But learning different cultures and learning what's important in different cultures, it really helped me create space or think about space for everybody. Like for me, being a woman, like what Nisha said about men, like it's so important for Black men to have a space in the art community and have, you know what I mean? It's important for, you know, everybody to have that space. So I think with me, it really helped me, um, I don't know, create or think about how it was going to benefit and give space to everyone and not just myself. So,
Absolutely. And that's, I don't know, that's so that selfless perspective. I
mhm.
think we all could use that sometimes. And so I think that's a really great way of saying it for sure.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing. Nyasha, over to you.
Yeah, I think, you know, knowing artists in other places in the world is always interesting when you get on calls with them and you listen to their experiences. Like I lived a huge portion of my life in South Africa. I have siblings that live there right now. And, for example, like my sister, there's something in South Africa called load shedding, which is like, again, as we know, most roots of things are racist beginnings, but
Mhm.
we go back because of apartheid and the situation of white people not really building the system so that everyone would be able to have power and be able to have luxury. They didn't build the systems that way. So the systems never evolved and they weren't supported in that way so that everyone would be secure. So now they have to kind of rotate out their electricity. So if you're running a business or even living, if you don't have a generator in South Africa, like you're struggling. Like everyone has to have that. And so I think of my siblings often in terms of like them creating and them building and them trying to do because that's just an additional struggle as an artist and as a creative that I think you know I have the luxury not to have to worry about here. I mean, my husband and my power can go out like one afternoon and it's fixed within the next couple hours, right?
Mhm.
It's just a very different experience. And especially because again my husband like works from home for 2 days a week, I work from home full time, and so it's just like a very different experience. And again, that might not be true in different aspects of even the United States. Like different states have different
Mhm.
experiences. And we know this because like Flint, Michigan is still asking
Mhm.
for clean water.
Yeah.
So, it varies everywhere, but we're all having different experiences as creatives and different things we're moving through and barriers, but also ways that we are uplifted and ways that we are seen and communities that are supporting us in our work. Um, in terms of what have I learned, I think my life going back in between South Africa and the States was so challenging as a young child. I think like switching schools like that, the school systems are not the same. Um, like in terms of even the years, so like I would oftentimes have to like do an extra half year every time I went to South Africa of a grade that I had already completed in the States because of that. And then on top of the fact that it's just like different, like the learning systems are different. There's a lot of different vibes. South Africa's was colonized by the British, so the energy was just very different. Uniforms, like just lots of different things. And for being in the motherland, for being in Africa, so many colonialist, like white supremacist ideals. Like I would never have been able to, have an afro. Like there was a huge breakout at my school because there's a girl who has a big afro. That's how our hair grows. Like if we don't do stuff to it, that is the natural way our hair grows. And there was this huge outpour of like, it's not professional, it looks unruly, all this stuff. And it's like, that's how her hair grows. So you're literally
Mhm.
telling her the essence of this black girl, the essence of her is not okay or acceptable. So, and this is in the motherland. So, you learn about all these different things and it shapes how I write. It shapes how I evolve. And I think, again, when I was younger, my parents had it's a good family friend. She's a realtor. She's still does our houses and things. If we like, as I, as us as kids have gotten our homes, she's been that realtor. She here in Colorado, we're very close with her. She lives in Boulder, and she's a Black woman. And when my parents adopted me as a baby, they asked her, should they tell me that I'm going to have struggles in the world or have difficulties being a Black person, like just because I of my skin? And she told them, no, do not say anything. Which, it's up and down. Everyone's like, some people feel like that conversation should happen, some people don't. Like, it's all up and down. So my parents didn't make that choice for me. And I will admit, for the longest time in the world, I moved like a white woman in the world. Like, I didn't recognize my skin having an impact in how I was moving in the world for a long time. That wasn't conscious to me. And I think I look back on that, especially because I was like moving between South Africa and the States. And I knew skin complexion, like, I knew that skin was having an impact, but it's like I've still felt like I moved differently in that, partially the privilege of being in proximity to whiteness through my parents, and also having financial privilege as well, just with my parents being comfortable financially also allowed me to move differently. But I think all of that, in terms of how I write now and what I write about now, just has me come from like a very different perspective in terms of how I'm coming back into myself as a Black woman first, reclaiming certain things that identities and pieces of me that I didn't fully understand, and even just like now I connect with the adoptee community, and that's been powerful to work with adult adoptees, because I think adoption is looked at this very nuanced and very beautiful, and oh, rainbows and sunshine, like God sent you these people to come and get you. And it's like, there's a lot of conversations to be had about adoption. It's like at the center of adoption is loss when you're separated from your parents, when you're separated from your mother. So there's lots of levels, lots of layers, and I think this has layered so much for me in terms of how I'm viewing the world. It's like I'm always adding new lenses, and that's for me growth and important, and I hope to have other people expand in that way. In terms of bridging cultures and bridging things, I feel like um, when I talk about myself and I think about other people, like a lot of us, especially as BIPOCs, were displaced or we've been disconnected from our roots. And so for me, bridging our culture, to me, a lot of us, it's coming back to re-bridging what was disconnected. So through colonization, through white supremacy, through these things, it's been broken. So to me, it's this re-bridging to ourselves, coming home, reclaiming our identities, reclaiming our power, coming into ourselves, knowing that we've always mattered, we've always been worthy, and like coming into ancestral, and I say indigenous, and I say indigenous in a global term because there's indigenous communities worldwide, but coming back into our indigenous and global practices. And so for me, that's where the bridging is coming in right now. A lot of people are coming back home to themselves.
Absolutely. I think I liked what you said about the lenses. You grow, you learn every single day. And so also kind of building not necessarily a cultural bridge, but like a lens bridge, like, oh, I remember when I felt the way that this person did, or oh, I totally identify, or maybe, you didn't in that one moment, but you grow a little bit more and you realize you do. I think that's super important. And just taking bits and pieces of those experiences through various lenses and adopting these new ones is super important. So, really well said there. Thank you. Okay, next question here. How does engagement with art contribute to the well-being and mental health of artists, both as creators and as audiences? And how can art, in your opinion, serve as a tool for healing and empowerment? Chelsea, I want to start with you on this because I know you're very focused on that healing aspect. So I want to hear from you first.
So it kind of flows back into what we talked about before with creating more art for the youth. I feel like creating art for the youth and just having art accessible and available to be able to do is so important, because not only does it, create that space for people to feel safe, it creates a space where we can, I don't know, like grow together, grow on our own, or we can, you know, I don't know, just, I don't know. I just think it's so important, as like for me, if I, like when I'm doing my art, if I don't have art has been the one constant that's really helped my mental health. That's really helped keep me in check and help me because I suffer from ADHD, obviously, which is why, I'm probably rambling on a bunch of different topics right now. But whenever I'm focusing on art, that really helps me, stay where I need to be and stay focused. And I think that tool should be used, everywhere. It should be used in schools. It should be used for adults, like Nyasha said. It should be used in community centers. It should be used everywhere because I feel like it's not just, um, you know, I don't know. I feel like it does more than just well-being. I really think it helps communities grow because, like we said before, it helps that empowerment. It helps people be able to feel strong enough to make a sign at a protest. It helps someone, you know what I mean, be strong enough to create that idea that they want to do and find other people who are influenced by that. So and I feel like with that, that also helps mental health because when I first moved here, I was by myself, just like, okay, what do I do? But being able to find other like minded artists like me really helped me. I don't know, it helped my soul and it helped me feel like I was in the right place and doing the right thing. So having those things available and accessible is a really big um, thing that we need. Like it's important. It's really
Absolutely.
important. Art is very important. And I think it's more important than people realize. Like they use it for advertisement, every commercial jingle, someone made that as far as art. Every, you know what I mean? The digital things people share on social media to get the word out about, issues happening in our world. That's art, art is art. There's art with writing, there's art with
Mhm.
music. So it's just it really touches on all aspects of humanity. And I think that is a really good tool to help serve for healing. Like for instance, I create these necklaces that are made to help with anxiety. And I think, oh, I wore one. Perfect. So this necklace I made, it's I call them my portal necklaces, portals. So I made these to help with anxiety. So if you're in somewhere and you don't really know or like where you want to be, you can spin it to kind of help, spin the energy away from you, or you can spin it towards you to bring the energy towards you. And I think with this, like, yeah, it looks cool, but it's also functional. So it's like this art, it's art, but it's also helping heal and create that empowerment as well. So,
Absolutely. I like what you said too about the healing on
mhm,
not at an individual level, but it can
yes,
also help partner level and
yeah.
community level. It can help in any way that you really choose to utilize it. So I thought that was a really great point that you made. Thank you for sharing that. Nyasha, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so when I write or create, I say that I'm writing or creating towards the world that my ancestors deserved and future children need. And so for me, I think it starts with being seen. Um, so like I know that I didn't see certain things growing up or there was a lack of it. And so for me, a lot of my creation has been filling gaps that I know weren't there for me and my inner child needs, but then I know that it's going to benefit the future generation.
Mhm,
Um, and so, a lot of my books are mostly Black characters because I feel like that's a huge gap that I grew up not experiencing. And I also remember I've been talking to friends recently about remembering the first book that had my name in it, growing up and seeing a book with my name. Um, and that was really powerful for me, being able to read a book that had my name in it. And thankfully, it was the positive character.
mhm,
But it was powerful to have that experience and be seen and affirmed in that way.
mhm,
And so I really, you know, continually am trying to be those doors and mirrors and windows for all the audiences who are interacting with my books. And I feel like if you read any of my books, you'll very quickly realize that the language is not necessarily simplified or easy. So I was like, my books, like generally, like the way that the publisher puts them is like, they're like, oh, it's for 5 to 9 year olds. I'm like, I don't know how many 5 to 9 year olds will be completely able to read my books, let alone understand them.
mhm,
But they can have gained so much from the pictures and somebody else reading to them. but I try and write almost for families, like in the sense that like families are interacting this together. I write for adults. I'm writing for multiple audience in one book. So I do that with a lot of my work because I'm trying to provide, you know, these words and these messages and these visuals for multiple audiences. Um, and in my visuals, I'm very, very, very intentional in my visuals in my books. So, like, for example, you know, if you know anything about luxury and outdoor spaces and pool spaces and what the history of that looked like for Black people in this country, then you'll have an understanding of how important it is for us to come back to those spaces and be welcomed in those spaces and know that we have place in those spaces. And so I try and make sure my books reflect that that's visible, that that's seen, so people start realizing, oh, because you'll hear things like kids being like, oh, Black people don't swim, or about like, oh, we don't do hiking or we don't do that, that's white people stuff. And like, I am really trying to break those things because these are things that historically became that way. They were never originally that way, but historically, through all of the issues of our systems, through racism, through white supremacy, all these moving pieces, that's how that came to be to where we are now. And so I really, through all of my work, am continually trying to fight those visuals, fight those systems through my visuals, and through my work and my literature and all the things. Um, Another place I'm deeply, deeply, deeply passionate about is elemental healing, because I feel like the Black body has been harmed by elements in so many ways. And it's so important to go back to the elements because that reconnects us to our roots, that connects us back to nature, that connects us to our ancestors, that connects us to the earth. It reminds us that this is our home. And I don't know how people forget it, but we're intertwined. So, like, if we're ruining the planet, that ruins like our livelihood and us being okay. So, remembering that, and I feel like if we're connected to our elements, it helps us in that remembering. And so I'm very much about elemental healing and us coming back in that way. So I have, like, if you have never been to a sound bath, go and do it. They're amazing. I try and do those pretty regularly. And when I had my first one, I was like, oh my gosh, this needs to be in water. Water's always been a safe place for me. It's been a healing place for me. It's an element that has such a complicated history for the Black community. But when you sit and think about water, water's life. We need it to live, we need it to function. And for it to be such an element that has, trauma and fear reaction in Black people, that's a problem. So, we have to do all this healing with that. Even fire, like the fact that Black bodies were burned, we have to sit and reclaim these elements and do healing work in all of these elements so that we can come back to them and that, like, allow ourselves to evolve and heal in so many ways. So, all those things.
Absolutely. I liked all what you said about finding your name in the book. I think that that kind of goes back also that representation that, I mean, how much that can mean to you as a child or an adult, it doesn't matter. That impact of just simply seeing your name represented in a book and going back to you guys both being in a market and not feeling represented, not feeling safe. I think representation and the small efforts of just that everybody can do in their daily life to make others feel represented and heard and seen, that goes so much further than I think people realize. And I think you really spoke to that well. So thank you for sharing. All right, final question I have for you guys. Thanks for hanging in here. Last one is, what are the emerging trends and future directions for women in art? And how do you continue, or how can the audience, all of us, continue to foster innovation, inclusivity, and equity in the evolving landscape of the art world? Nyasha, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I feel like emerging trends, like I said, I think that people are being less ashamed of their identities, and especially if they push beyond what people expect, because I think we get boxed in a lot of times. Oh, you're Democrat, oh, you're Republican, these are all the things that you're in. And it's like, that's not really true. Like, you really don't know who someone is unless you sit down and talk to them and really figure out who they are. I know that my mother-in-law, like being a Gen Xer, there's aspects of her identity that she hasn't always been able to, or felt able to be as honest about certain on social media and with community, because she's scared of the backlash of the older generations. And I'm like, do it. Be yourself, be your full self. We love you. Like, step into it, step in your power, And, she's walking into that more authentically and in her identity. And you can see when people start moving more authentically, you can feel it in their energy and the way that they're moving and how it feels and their voice, that it's transformative in terms of how you're going to connect with others, how other people are going to feel about your work, and how your work will transform when you are being in your fullest and your truest self. Um, and I think just when it comes to how can we foster innovation and inclusivity, equity, all of that, I mean, we got to decolonize, we've got to indigenize, we've got to liberate, we've got to do the work. Um, I mean, you can't transform if you're not seeing things. It's like continually adding those lenses. My husband's been a huge lens for me. Like, I always identify as a feminist. I have a feminist children's book. Like, I started a feminist organization on my college campus. Like, that's a vibe for me.
Mhm.
My husband had to sit with me and, first of all, help me with like making my feminism more intersectional. And then he also had to sit with me and show me where feminism has done harm in our world, and
Mhm.
where like there have been major issues and how they have harmed the Black family in certain things. So I had to really sit with that and really acknowledge that and like take that in and put those layers on my, and then my husband's helped me in how my feminism, because I feel like feminism benefits everyone, right? It benefits men, it benefits women, and how my feminism become more expansive through my husband challenging me and holding me accountable and helping me see ways where I'm not living up to what I say I believe as a feminist. So I am really here for that. I'm all about accountability and us being willing to be challenged, being willing to grow, being willing to um, understand that we're all going to make mistakes, but it's like how you react to them and the willingness to evolve and grow and transform together.
Absolutely.
Um,
And doing that reflection, I think, is really hard at people. I
Yeah.
mean, myself included, I can sometimes be sensitive, like, oh my gosh, I did this wrong. And it's not about, it's be careful of your reactions for sure, but understand that it's just an opportunity to be educated and learn something new and see something through a different lens. I appreciate that you gave us that personal example. Well, I think that that's really great. Chelsea, I'll pass it over to you.
So I really feel like creating that representation has been a big emerging trend. I think that's really good, but I also feel like sometimes the representation is just for show. You know what I mean? And so I really want to create that real representation. And that's why for me, I only post like on my page on my website, I only post women of color because I want other women of color to see that and think, hey, it's cool. You know what I mean? It's okay to be into this kind of stuff. It's okay to tap into that spirituality and that, like what Nyasha was saying, that earth part of yourself that a lot of us run from because it's so important for healing and creating that space that we really should be in. And I really think that a good way to help foster that is to have collaborations. I feel like some of the best things that I have made in terms of my art has been when I was collaborating with other women and throwing ideas off of, and making space for other women, helping other businesses grow. So I will kind of talk about a little bit more of the company we were doing. I am going to start helping businesses grow their page and helping businesses get high quality photos because I'm a photographer and not everybody can afford $1,000 for a shoot. So I really want to be able to help women be in that space. So we're hoping to possibly, do some workshops in a really earth-centered space to help people's businesses grow, as well as helping women kind of get back to that source and get back to that aspect of everything. And I think too a big way we could keep that landscape growing is holding ourselves accountable. You know what I mean? I really feel like sometimes I've said the wrong thing or have done the wrong thing. Like for instance, I remember when we were planning events, we're like, well, maybe we should do, like a can drive to help whatever. And Yasha was like, sometimes those things, they look good from the outside, but they don't actually help those communities. So realizing, oh yeah, maybe we should. And that's kind of what formed the idea of helping other businesses, because you're like, yeah, a can drive looks good from the outside, but is this really helping the communities we want to help. And it's like, no, it just, you know what I mean? So it's holding ourselves accountable when we do make mistakes and being able to fix those mistakes is a really good thing. And for me, I was very much, in this idea a few years ago where only my opinion was right, and like, if you didn't think like me, you're dumb. But I've come to this place now to where I'm able to view things from all sides and to see every perspective. And what I've realized is having we think that like these different perspectives make us enemies, but they actually make us closer together, because we all, at the end of the day, most of us want the same things, but we just want to get to it in a different way. So I really think what's really helped me heal and helped me not come at things from such a negative aspect is viewing things from all sides. So I really think that, creating inclusivity, representing people and holding yourself accountable is a really good way to you know, foster those directions and help, you know, those businesses and women in those communities grow. So,
Absolutely. And the power of multiple
yes,
perspectives and engaging in
yes,
those multiple perspectives on just advancing missions and, societal and structural changes, no matter how big or how small. I think that's a really great point, Chelsea. Thank you for sharing that. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging in. I know we went a little over time, so I super appreciate both of you. Again, all of their resources I will have on Reach social medias, Facebook and LinkedIn. And Nyasha and Chelsea, thank you so much for taking the time. I will be in touch with both of you.
Can
so
I share a couple items for people?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I loved that question, and I really want to share
No
that.
worries. Yeah, you're
Over
good.
time, though. Okay, so one would be the book My Grandmother's Hands. It's really, really powerful, so I suggest that. Um, and then I'm going to plug my own book, which is Keep Dreaming Black Child, of course. So that's another one. If you are into spiritual vibes and ancestral vibes and all the things, Jambalaya. This is the older version, but this book by Tish Louise is amazing. And if you are business looking for business support, this is the handbook for pricing and ethical guidelines so that you don't get taken advantage of as an artist. So like supporting me, and I'm terrible at pricing, so this is like been super helpful. Yes.
Thank you for sharing those. Thank you. Thank you. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining today. I will be in touch with both of you shortly. So thank you. Talk with you both
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Bye.
having us. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.